ever accused me of being an intelligent person. And one of the less intelligent choices I've made is dropping everything at 10 a.m. on a Thursday to drive 7.5 hours south and east to buy a car I don't need with money I don't have to spend in a foggy McRainstorm. It's the conditions we're dealing with. So the car that I'm picking up is actually pretty special to me, and I haven't seen it in 5-6 years. And I was pulling down the street, one of the main road the owner now lives off of, and I saw him go in the opposite direction in the car, like one final drive, and I just lost my mind. So I just called him. He's going to meet me in this parking lot. We're going to load it up here once I get to give it the old look over, which will be a 3-second cool. I'll take it.
Approximately 10 hours later.
Oh, that drive sucked. I didn't make any video. Approximately 10 hours later is kind of a lie. It's been like 2 days. I was so beat by the time I got back, I couldn't see straight. But I got the car in the garage. I'll go over what it means clapped out, what it means to me, and what it's all about. All right, so I built this car originally. I actually bought the car originally in Rockford, Illinois, a suburb of, not really a suburb, but a city near Chicagoland. The car had 100,000 miles on it. It was fairly stock. There wasn't anything done to the car, but it was in really good shape. And I've always wanted one, so I scooped it up. Again, it was stock. It had the stock 6-cylinder, whatever carbureted engine in it. Still drove fine, but an exhaust bolt broke off in the header, so I decided to pull the whole engine out, and that's what started my LS swap. Like my first big LS swap project was this car. So I put it up on jack stands, and I spent the next year or so tearing it down, redoing the suspension, getting it ready for a motor transplant. Went through a ton of different short blocks from jackass sellers that were just ripping me off because I was so naive. Finally ended up with a decent short block. The car started to take shape. At the time, I was working for an internet retailer, e-commerce, motorsports sales outfit, and I was pretty just put off by motorsports in general. So I started Clapped Out. And I started Clapped Out because this car offered me a ton of new friendships and a ton of new relationships with people all over the Bowling Green area, which is where I was living at the time. I then took a job at Dynasty in Louisville, Kentucky, and we ended up building a turbo kit for the car. So the car got an automatic swap, a turbo kit, still a stock 5.3. I called my guy Chris at Behind Bars Race Cars. He built me this badass fuel cell, drive shaft shop rear suspension, rear axles. Turbo kit turned out awesome. I was stoked on it. It was clean. Everything about the car I loved. And then I just kind of started to get burnt out. I didn't want to play with it. I didn't want to drive it. I had fun with it on the street, but I wasn't in a position to have a full-blown race car, despite the fact that the car looked sick and it had a ton of power. It didn't have the chassis. It had no roll cage, didn't have any chassis stiffening or suspension that was worth a damn, but it did look sick. It made good power, I think 700 wheel through the TH400 at the time. So that's kind of a brief overview and recap of the car and the build and so on and so forth. I ended up selling it to a guy out of Indianapolis, and then it got sold to a guy that lived in California, and then it got sold again to a guy that was in South Carolina. As far as I know, I think that was the extent of the ownership swaparoo. And I logged on to Facebook in the morning, and there was a post on the Boosted LSX sales forum that said there was this car, and I DM'd him like 12 minutes after it was posted. We went back and forth for a minute. I said, I'm on my way, dude. I went up to my boss at Dynasty, Hal. He's the owner. If you hear me talk about Bert, or you see the other videos, Bert, Hal, Bert, all the same person. I said, Bert, I need to go to South Carolina. I showed him the thread. He said, well, get on the road, let's go. And I was off. Went to pick the car up, and now the car is home, and it needs a little love. All right, so let's go over some of the changes that were made after I sold the car. It now has a built short block. The turbo kit and the engine bay is a little worse for wear. It's just had a life of racing since it's been gone. It's got billet specialties. It's got Wilwood brakes front and rear. It's got a bunch of Techno Toy tuning suspension parts now. Still the same rear end setup. Still the same fuel cell setup. It's got a full 10-point cage. One of the cool things about this roll cage, this is pretty interesting, but this roll cage and the roll cage in my RX-7 were both built by Norman at Storm and Norms, and he's in the Indianapolis area, and he did a stellar job on this cage as fitment goes. Trunk side of things is obviously different as well. A little weight plate because the car has been a grudge car, a no prep car. Solid state battery cut off. You got your CO2 boost control. Battery's been relocated. Fire extinguisher on the back. You got to have that. Got a parachute now, which is actually super handy because this car is freaking sketchy. It shouldn't say sketchy. It's not sketchy. It's a controllable spin. Inside, the owner that I sold it to, he commissioned the entire dash to get rebuilt. So the whole dash is custom. It's got the speed hut gauges there, the Holley gauges up there, and the Holley 7-inch dash. Still on a Holley Dominator. That Cheetah shifter, this is funny, that shifter has a very special place in my heart. So that shifter actually came out of Anthony Mana's Camaro. He has a black F-body Camaro that's pretty notorious in the Chicagoland area, and he sold me the transmission that's in this car and the shifter that's in this car. The transmission ended up getting redone by RPM Transmissions in Indy. They did a stellar job on that. They do a stellar job with all the transmissions they build. And the car obviously is now on CO2 boost control, which you saw. Now it's got a built short block as well. And it's just, it's a lot of good with a lot of tired. The whole car, it just looks like it needs a nap. When I owned it originally, the front bumper was white. The bumper guard right there, or the, I don't know what you call it, the lip, whatever it is, that was black. I had knockoff, like CCW looking wheels on it. It's got Billet Specialties bead locks on it. I like the wheels. I don't like the color combo. I prefer the whole all white look. Same with the carbon. I think carbon's dope, but I'd like to get that painted. I'd like to get the whole car repainted white. And you can see like the car is not perfect. It's had body work done. This is where the stock rear bumper bolts to it. And you can tell it's been a different color in a former life, or that's just down to primer. I don't know. There's chips out of the paint pretty much everywhere. It wasn't perfect when I sold it, but again, the car has been raced and been thrashed, so I didn't expect it to be perfect. The trim I popped off, so all these holes had already been there. There's just a lot, like I said, it's a lot of tired. Turbo kit specifically is just beat. One thing that I noticed when I got it home, it's got a bunch of coolant pressure. Like I fired it up and pulled it off the trailer, and just opening the radiator cap, it sounds like it's got 50 pounds of pressure inside the radiator. So there's a little bit of coolant on the ground underneath it. I don't care at all. It didn't matter to me. I figured I'd be pulling the motor anyway to freshen some stuff up. What concerns me a little though is the header on this side is smashing into the shock tower, and I don't remember it being like that. This side has some clearance on it. If you stand back, the engine itself looks off center to the left, passenger side. I don't know if it's an illusion or what, but maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me, but I think I'm gonna pull the turbo kit off. I don't know what I'm gonna do, if I'm gonna redo the turbo kit or what. It's got a comp 88mm water cooled only turbo. Obviously it's been doing work. I've seen and heard some of the times the cars run, so I'm not totally opposed to keeping it. But at the same time, if I redo the turbo kit, it is an option. So I'm keeping that open. The intake manifold, the intake manifold was one of the first snipers released, and my buddy Colin at Holley actually gave me this intake at PRI 2016, I believe. And it's just one of those things you can see. It's originally black, but the heat from the engine has just morphed it into this bronze color, as it has on the fittings on the fuel rails. So again, just tired. It's just really beat. The Monkey Fab sticker, Michael Hennessy Monkey Fab. That's one of the first people that I reached out to when I started messing with this car, and he built me a custom catch can, which I still have from this vehicle. But yeah, it just needs some love, and I'm not bummed about any of it. It's all stuff I can handle. It's all stuff I want to do. I'm excited. I'm very, very excited. Not a super informative or over-the-top video, but I just wanted to introduce everybody to the car. For now, I'm going to pull the Kirkies out because they're 16-inch Kirkies, and I'm not a 16-inch Kirky kind of guy, mainly because I'm not small. So I'm going to swap the Kirkies out. I got a pair of Sparco Evo Ls that I bought for the RX-7, and I'm going to see if those will get fitting in there, and I'm going to try to enjoy the car for a little bit and take it a day at a time. So thanks everybody for watching. Stay tuned. We also have a ton of drops coming to the Clapped Out store in the next couple weeks. We'll have that finalized and a bunch of cool stuff. Bye.